Hello, I'm Rachel from Dwensa Garden in Ireland, and you are very welcome to this November garden tour. Now this morning I'm going to be behind the camera and it's going to be a brief visit, but we have a bit of sunshine and there are some things looking super in the garden, like this glorious Yucca gloriosa, which is in full flower, and isn't it just gorgeous? So come on, let's have a look around the garden and see what's looking good. There is nothing more lovely than the light at this time of year. It's very low, but the quality is really, really good. And I hope it's going to show my garden off well this morning because, well, it's just wonderful when it does. So in we go through one of those arches. As you can see, I still have some dahlias in flower, and these are dahlias that I don't lift, that I just leave in the ground all the time, and they are still in bloom. The first frosts always put pay to the dahlias and blacken them, and that's usually the trigger to dig them up. But this year I dug up my dahlias before the first frost because actually, you know, we haven't had a frost yet at all. So taking a step back from the dahlias and glancing over the cloud pruned area, we can see that there is some very nice autumn colour in the leaves of the trees. This is one of my two liquidambar trees, and it's the one called Worplesdon, and it was actually planted for my mother who died a few years ago. And it is just taking on its autumn colour. It's not fully developed yet, but it's certainly getting there. You can see the shades of the leaves there maturing nicely. Some orange, some red, and even still some green at this stage. And at the base of this tree is my autumn flowering crocus. Crocus speciosus, which looked so wonderful in the crocus planting video not so long ago, but now has passed its best by. You can see how the top of the liquidambar tree has attained a more reddish hue than down below. And to the right of it we have a very bare looking border, but this is a border where I recently planted 100 tulips. So in spring it should look super. A great plant for this time of year is Liriope muscari, which just flowers and flowers, and this is a very low maintenance plant that I highly recommend. So everything has really just gone over at this stage. To the right we can see hostas that looks fabulous with their yellow colour, but at this stage it's just gone a bit too far to be attractive. But one of my favourite trees is this one here in the middle with its beautiful, beautiful red leaves. And this is a type of Acer. When the sun gets behind it, it really looks like those leaves are on fire. But actually I have something very, very funny to show you just to the left of the Acer. So swinging around, and you can see I have a Rhododendron just here. But look in here. This is a rhododendron flower. So this is the mad rhododendron called Christmas cheer that regularly flowers very early in the year, but not at Christmas time. Oh no, not at Christmas time. But who knows, this year maybe it's going to do it. Maybe it's going to flower at Christmas time. And the mellow light in the long border where the grasses flutter in the breeze is looking really quite pretty at the moment, if a bit, I don't know, a little bit messy, a little bit sloppy, but you need to appreciate that. You need to not always look for a very well maintained garden, because at this time of year it is really, really hard to achieve that. I could be out here raking leaves every single day and the place is still going to look messy. So there comes a point when you realise you just have to let it go. Look, there's an Alstroemeria in flower. So this Alstroemeria is putting up another flush of flowers, although the stems aren't as long as with the last one. Normally this is a plant that needs staking, but this doesn't need staking at all. And the fact that we haven't had any frost yet means that these flowers look really, really good. We've now moved to the part of the garden where we have a path leading across to the next section. Goodness, that sounds really uninformative, doesn't it? But what I have to show you here is the grasses practically on fire from the sun. Absolutely gorgeous. And even the yellowness of that tree here next door to it is really, really attractive. Now this is the tree that's known as dead man's finger because of its fruits. But look at that foliage that no one ever talks about being an autumn feature at all. Everyone goes mad for the reds and the oranges at this time of year, but the yellows, I really think the yellows are something extra special. I'll tell you what, let's keep an eye out for gorgeous yellow autumn colour as we go through the garden. And here's an example of how glorious a hosta can look at this time of year with its wonderful yellow colour. Yes, yellow. This one hasn't kind of gone mushy yet at this stage, and when the sun catches it, it's just wonderful. This is Francis Williams, but I tell you this, but many, many hostas look this good in autumn. And just to the right of the hosta we have an Impatiens, which is offering up this wonderful flower for our scrutiny. And I do love the big, big flowers on this plant. Let me show you how big these are. They really are, you know, quite large. And with a wonderful spur at the back of the flower, making it, well, something that looks quite exotic. And just across from the Impatiens we have my Amicia, which is now in flower with its yellow pea-like flowers that look super against the unusual shape of the leaves. And the overhead canopy is really what's important, I guess, at this time of year, because the detail of flower down below just isn't there anymore. So you have to look up, you have to look at the yellows and the evergreens as well, like this Tetrapanix rex, which is holding on to its giant leaves. When the blue sky is behind it, it really looks good. And here's a close-up of the flowers on my Eryngium, which are just opening. As I'm walking around, I'm also looking out for windows. And here, if we just look to the left, there's a natural window where you can look underneath the canopy of the Tetrapanix rex and above the oak-leafed hydrangea. Yes, somebody was asking me about the oak-leafed hydrangea. And you can see that the light is picking up the things behind, like the seed heads of the Liquidambar over there, which look really super. And just look at how glorious this oak-leafed hydrangea is. The leaves have a glorious shape to start with, but when they get those red hues, it's just fantastic. And just moving over to the left here, we have my Trochodendron tree, which is in flower. Okay, well, I think it's setting its fruits now at this stage, but this is a lovely evergreen tree. It has very inconspicuous flowers that aren't often noticed, but it's an unusual plant and a great one to have. And here we have some beautiful autumn yellow developing on this gorgeous little tree with its mad leaves. It seems to have two types of leaves, and it gets a beautiful butter yellow as the season goes on. And this is where my millions of Ligularia seedlings or weedlings come from. So moving away from the Trochodendron, just a final glance back at this part of the garden, the viburnum is that red-leafed plant on the right, which is just losing its leaves now. But the tetrapanax, which is the big green one overhead, and the dead man's finger down below above the grasses are what are looking great here. And now we move over to the iron tree, or Parrotia, which is a glorious glut of yellow here, and it's contrasted beautifully by that dark leafed phormium just on the right. Makes it look really, really nice. Now let's just have a pan up to the top of the tree. Not an enormous tree, but certainly a beautiful one. Some of the leaves acquire these splodges of red on them, almost like somebody had dripped paint on the edge. It doesn't seem to be doing this so much this year. It seems to be mostly yellow, but it is really, really an attractive feature. Intersectional peony, producing quite a lot of really pretty autumn colour there at the tips of its leaves. And just over here we have a very pretty picture. We have a rhododendron that's busy making buds for next year. This is the Percy Weissman one, as far as I recall. Behind it we have the white flower heads of a hydrangea, and to the left we have a glorious yellow vision of this perennial, which has the most amazing autumn colour. I am putting the name up on the screen, but isn't it just captivating? Completely steals the show here right now. And here we have the perennial wallflower, and when I bought it, didn't I tell you that it flowered all year long? Well, here it is. I mean, it can take a little break to regroup, but then back it comes. And now we have moved up to the top section of the garden, where the Calicanthes is making the best show with its large yellow leaves there in the middle of this frame. A glorious splodge of sunshine. Over here you can see more Alstroemeria doing another flush of flowers, another round of flowers, and again, not as tall as the first, but just as beautiful. And I guess, you know, if we were sitting out more at this time of year, we'd appreciate them more. But hey, they're there and they're lovely. The cherry blossoms don't really seem to have taken on their autumn colours yet, but there's something that has. Look at that vision of orange just there. That is my Cornus cusa. And Cornus cusa really has to be one of the best trees for a small garden, because it's a small growing tree. It produces amazing flowers in summer, loads of them that cover the plant. They're actually bracts, not flowers, but they look amazing. Then in autumn it has the lovely red fruits, which we can see now on the ground, and then it gets autumn foliage, so it's a great all-rounder. Here is what is left of those edible fruits. I've just picked them up from the ground. I won't be eating them now though. And over here beside the old greenhouse we have a lot of hydrangeas looking really good, because as I said, no frost, so they just continue on. And we have 2 paniculatas here and 1 macrophylla. And I think paniculata hydrangeas have got to be my favourite, because they are just so elegant. And this one is really tall. It gets cut hard back every spring to just a framework, but still it wants to be tall, and that's fine in the position it's in. But let me show you this other interesting macrophylla hydrangea to its right. So this is a macrophylla hydrangea, but it happens to be a white one. And we all know the trick that macrophylla hydrangeas do normally, when they're not white at least. If your soil is alkaline, then the mop heads turn pink. But if your soil is acidic, then they turn blue. And you can see how in this, even though it's a white macrophylla hydrangea. It's got flecks of blue in it, and that's because, as we all know, my soil is acidic. So leaving behind the beautiful hydrangeas and just travelling across some hedging where you can see in the far distance a bit of an orangey thing going on, and we're going over there to have a look at that tree right there. Now this is a very interesting bush with corky branches, you can see, and it's normally bought for its autumn foliage, but, and take a lesson from my book, you need to plant it in full sun if you want to get the autumn foliage colour. So we can see that it really is quite green down below where it's in shade, but it has reached up and is poking out up above, and only at that point does it become red and display the beautiful autumn foliage that it was bought for in the first place. And just over here to the right of it, we see my ginkgo tree, and here's another example of something planted in the wrong place. This is a beautiful tree with really unusual looking leaves that become butter yellow in autumn, and I need to move this tree, so that might be a job for next year. I do have a spot for it and I want it to look magnificent, so it needs a better position. And now we'll just step over to the other side of the garden for a brief look at what, if anything, is looking good over there. But a final pan up of my Paulownia tree, which has enormous, beautiful sun-catching leaves. And here we are over the other side, where I just want to briefly show you the fact that it's autumn, I guess. The bed in front has had an injection of tulips and the blue ones have gone in there, so I can't wait to see them next spring. And the backdrop to this section of the garden is a persicaria bank, Persicaria affinis, which is completely red now at this stage and looks quite well. It will lose its leaves as time goes on, but for the moment it's looking good. And the summer flowering magnolia is producing a mad bud that can never, surely never come to fruition. And we have peonies looking very autumny, and my rhododendron, Sino Grande, which has, well, actually this is shaping up well for spring. I hope we don't get early frosts, because that always sees off the beautiful enormous yellow flowers on this little baby. So lots of autumn colour here with this Regersea, and then we have a hydrangea behind which has one single blue plume right there in the middle. But I want to show you the joke of the garden, so we're going to have to swing very slightly to the left to see it. Yeah, do you see that? Do you see that blue spire just there on the left? So this was a delphinium that was cut back in the normal way when it had finished flowering, and it has decided it is going to flower again, which is all very well, but you know, it's November now, we've done Halloween, what on earth are you playing at? And just over here to the right is the spot where I saved a lily recently. It's one of the ones that was potted up in my recent lily potting video. And that brings me to the end of this November garden tour. A bit unusual, I suppose, because we haven't had the frosts. I certainly hope that you enjoyed it. The surprise colour, I guess, that was out there, but also the beautiful autumn hues that couldn't be forgotten as well. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Bye!